Hello and welcome to my overall thoughts of the Fall 2015 anime season. I decided to do this as a bit of a follow-up to all the first impressions videos I was making, so what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be going through all 10 shows that I've watched this season. I'm going to give you a little bit of my thoughts on them, and then I'm going to tell you whether or not I kept with them, or whether I dropped them completely. However, before we get into anything, just as a bit of a warning, I am very fickle when it comes to anime. If I'm finding a show okay but not that great, or it starts to drag a bit, I will drop it immediately. I have no patience when it comes to that kind of stuff. So if I've dropped a show that you like, just know that the problem is most likely with me and not the actual show. I also know that you guys might not be interested in every single anime that I'm going to list off, so I've got time codes down in the description so you can skip through to the shows that you actually want to hear about. Okay, let's get into it, and the first anime that I watched this season was Young Blackjack. Now, when I think back on this, overall the quality was good, the animation was good, the art style was good, the characters were good, everything was good. But the problem is, it never gripped me. I was never engaged in what was happening. The point where I figured this out was episode 5 or 6. There's a torture scene. And I remember seeing people saying like, oh my god, that scene, it was so gut-wrenching, it was really hard to watch. I didn't care. I felt absolutely no emotion when watching that scene. So at that point I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm into this. I think I'm just going to have to drop it and move on to something else. And one of the things I moved on to was Beautiful Bones Sakurako's investigation. Basically, the same thing happened with Young Blackjack. Everything here was decent, but it never truly gripped me. Sakurako was cool and the mysteries were kind of interesting, but I felt that the story never quite got going fast enough for my liking. I decided to drop it after episode 6, which was the Summer Festival episode, and I felt, especially with the twist that happens there, the whole mystery, the way it wraps up, I felt like I'd completely wasted my time. I was like, what was the point in this episode? Seriously. So, yeah, drop that one as well. The next anime that I watched was the Asterisk War. I went into this one completely blind. I just saw it was on Crunchyroll, decided to give it a try. And boy, was that a mistake. I hated this. I straight up hated pretty much everything about it. The action scenes were cool. Everything else, ugh. I dropped this at the end of episode 3, and the only reason why I kept watching it that long was because it's kind of a code with me. I feel that in order to form a solid opinion on a show, I have to give it at least 3 episodes, because things could turn around. The first episode might be kind of but it could pick up. This didn't really pick up for me though. Ugh. Next we have The Perfect Insider, or Everything Becomes F. Definitely the best mystery anime that came out this season. It's also a very good example of why I give an anime at least 3 episodes, because the first 2 episodes were really slow. There was a lot of good dialogue, but I was bored through a lot of it, and it was only just interesting enough for me to keep watching. But episode 3 though is when the mystery really starts to get going, and I was so excited. I couldn't wait to see where it would go next. But then it ended up slowing right back down again. I was basically waiting for like 4 episodes for something to happen. But I stuck with it because I knew at some point it was going to pick up again. And man, I am so glad that I stuck with this, because when the answer is revealed, when the mystery is finally revealed to you, oh, it's awesome. It was totally worth it. The ending was also pretty cool. It was very somber and mellow. But I felt that a lot of things were just going over my head. In fact, that's the way I felt throughout this entire show. There was a lot of details just going over my head, which is probably why I found the middle part to be kind of slow. I think this is an anime that you're going to have to watch multiple times in order to get every single detail that they're going to display to you. So, Perfect Insider, great show, definitely one of the best of the season. Next up, we've got Chivalry of a Failed Knight. A lot of people have slung a bunch of crap at this show. I've even heard some people say it's flat out bad, and I will concede it's got a lot of flaws. There are a ton of cliches, there's a lot of blatant fan service, and sometimes the writing can get very corny. But it managed to do one thing that many other anime this season failed to do, and that was Hold My Attention. It managed to make me really feel for the characters, especially Iki. Oh, the way he struggles in this really got me into it, and I was absolutely enthralled with the action scenes. I found them really enjoyable. It did start to drop off a bit for me. I didn't enjoy it in the middle as much as I did in the start, and the ending I'm kind of ambivalent about. I mean, there are a lot of sweet and satisfying moments in there, but at the same time, it's a massive anticlimax, so not really sure what to think of it. It definitely isn't anything great, but it's still a lot of fun, so it's another show that I'd recommend checking out. Moving on, we've got Heavy Object now. This started off really bad. It had probably the worst use of fan service that I've ever seen, and also the entire first episode was this massive exposition dump. It was really hard to sit through, but in episode 2, things started to pick up, and by episode 3 it had actually become fairly good. So I was like, wow, if it keeps going at this rate, if it keeps picking up from like fairly good, it'll be awesome by the end. But it didn't really do that though. It went from being bad up to fairly good, and then just kind of stayed fairly good. And to me that wasn't quite good enough. I just wasn't interested enough in it, and I ended up dropping this around episode 5. I then moved on to another mech anime, Comet Lucifer. Beautiful artwork, awesome animation, amazing soundtrack, crap characters, crap story. Even though technically it was great, that's not really enough to make me like an anime. I need good story, good characters, and this just didn't have it. I found it incredibly boring, and I dropped it at episode 3. Next up, we probably have the most hyped anime of the entire season, One Punch Man. You know that warning at the beginning of the video? That was mostly for this. I really wanted to like it. I really did, so much so that I gave it a glowing review in my first impressions video. I was like, oh my god, this is awesome, it's amazing, I can't believe I didn't watch this sooner. Everybody, go watch it now. But the thing I think I was ignoring was that I didn't laugh as much in episode 3 as I did in the first 2 episodes. So a few days go by. I didn't get around to episode 4, and I was like, oh, you know, this is weird. I was so into it. Why haven't I watched episode 4 yet? So I get half an hour to myself, and I sit down, I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch episode 4 of One Punch Man. I'm going to love it. I'm going to laugh so hard. It's going to be hilarious. I got about halfway through, and I was so not into it that I just had to drop it there. It was incredibly depressing. It was a pity because the quality was still there. The animation, the artwork was still fantastic, and the jokes, they seemed written in the same way that the jokes were in the first 2 episodes. It was the exact same quality of writing, but the comedy had just become stale to me. In the 4th episode, I probably only laughed about twice. And that was kind of to get me to laugh a bit more, like I was trying to get myself more into it, but it just wasn't working. Now we've got what was probably the runner-up of the season for me, which was Haikyuu 2. I thought the first season of Haikyuu was decent. Nothing amazing, but fun enough for me to watch to the end. In my opinion, season 2 is so much better, primarily because they focus a lot on the character development. The backstories were really touching, and for me personally, I love seeing a character grow. I love seeing them work really hard to improve themselves and then having their efforts pay off in the end. And that's basically what the first half of this season has focused on, all the individual characters trying to improve their skills. So I'm really looking forward to the second half where all their efforts and all their hard training pays off. Finally, we have my favourite anime of the season, which is Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. One of the main criticisms I've seen of this season is that there isn't that must-watch show. There isn't that show that's so amazing that you have to go out and see it. I would argue that there is. There is a must-watch show this season, and it's called Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. It's been such a long time since I cared so much for characters in a Gundam anime, and I think that's primarily due to the child soldiers thing that they're going with now. The child soldiers angle isn't nothing new to mecha anime. It's not even anything new to the Gundam series really, but I think the main reason why it got to me here is that it's never been done this brutally. Like, these kids just get the crap kicked out of them on a regular basis, and the point where it really jumped out to me how bad these kids have it is when Cordelia was teaching them how to write their own name. Now, these weren't 8, 9, 10-year-olds, although they were there too, but these were the older kids, the 15, 16, 17-year-olds. They hadn't learned how to read or write because they were too busy learning how to fight and shooting people on the battlefield. That was, as a person who's starting to be a teacher, that really got to me, actually. Technically, it's great as well. The art, animation, the soundtrack, all of that is fantastic. So if you're going to check out anything from this season, I would highly recommend Iron-Blooded Orphans. Looking back on this season, of the 10 anime that I decided to give a try, I ended up sticking with 4 of them, and that might sound kind of 40%, but to me that's pretty good since I have the attention span of like a 4-year-old child. Even most of the stuff they end up dropping wasn't horrible, it was still pretty good, it just wasn't really my thing. Overall, I think I'm going to end up using the full 2015 season as a benchmark for a decent anime season in the future. So anything above this I'll consider to be a good to great season, and anything below this will be, kind of bad or disappointing. So anyway, thank you very much to everybody who watched this video. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment. If you like this video and want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.